All right, so let's start with the big story that we're tracking on WION at this hour. The conflict between Iran and Israel has now reached its 10th day. With both nations unleashing new waves of attacks against each other, tensions remain high. Strikes and counter-strikes continue to escalate. And here's a roundup of the latest developments that are unfolding at this hour. Now, the IDF has said that it has completed a new wave of airstrikes in southwestern Iran, targeting dozens of military sites. And according to the military, around 30 Israeli Air Force fighter jets have carried out coordinated strikes. Now, the operation reportedly involved over 50 munitions and struck dozens of military targets. The Iranian President Masoud Pezeshkian visited the IRIB headquarters in Tehran 5 days after the Israelis bombed the Iranian state media headquarters during a live broadcast. Now, condemning the Israeli bombing of a television channel, Masoud Pezeshkian said that this strike was a deliberate assault on the freedom of press by the Israelis. And the latest images by the Iranian media shows the aftermath of the Israeli airstrikes on a vehicle inspection center in the Isfahan province, with visible destruction and smoke rising from the site. Now, the IDF says that about 2 Iranian drones that were launched from Iran at Israel were shot down over the Arava region in southern Israel. The sirens were sounded in the community of Zukim. The Iranian state media has released some new images and footage showing the launch of the IRIB-1 and IRIB-2, which are the long-range drones targeting Israeli sites. The images depict the preparation and also the deployment of these drones, which are launched from mobile platforms often mounted on civilian trucks. The US President Donald Trump said that Iran has a maximum of about 2 weeks to avoid possible American involvement in this war. And this follows his earlier statement that he will decide within a fortnight whether to pursue the military option in halting the ongoing hostilities.
Giving them a period of time. We're going to see what that period of time is, but I'm giving them a period of time, and I would say 2 weeks would be the maximum.
Now, in a phone call with French President Emmanuel Macron, the Iranian President Masoud Pezeshkian said that Iran's nuclear rights cannot be taken away by threat or war, further saying that Iran's civilian nuclear program is allowed under international law and neither foreign pressure nor military force will make Iran abandon what is its right. Now, Iran's Foreign Minister Abbas Araghchi has accused Israel of not negotiating in good faith, questioning Tehran's sincerity. Meanwhile, Israel's Foreign Minister Gideon Saar has said that the attacks by the Israelis were meant to in fact disrupt talks, insisting that Israel remains open to diplomacy. And this is what the Iranian Foreign Minister had in fact said, that Iran is open to diplomacy but it will engage in diplomacy only if the Israeli aggression stops.
We know from the record of Iran, they are not negotiating honestly. And we just read it from the last report of the IAEA that stated they are breaching all their commitments. So personally, I'm skeptical with regard to their intention and honesty.
As everybody knows, we were in the middle of negotiations with the United States, and we were supposed to meet for the 6th round on 15 June. Then all of a sudden, the Israelis decided to attack us on 13, only 2 days before the negotiations. It is obvious that they are against diplomacy. It is obvious that they don't want, a peaceful, settlement of this issue.
All right, now joining us in the broadcast, we've got Mr. Shaheen Gubadi, who happens to be a member of the Foreign Affairs Committee of the National Council of Resistance of Iran, the parliament in exile of the Iranian resistance. Mr. Gubadi, thank you very much indeed for joining us, as you're associated with this parliament in exile. So you are opposed to the current incumbent government in Iran. Is that correct, sir?
Actually, no, we are against this regime, and we have been striving to basically overthrow this regime and establish a democratic republic for the past 4 decades. Mm-hmm. And thanks for having me on your program, by the way.
All right. So, looking at what has unfolded in the last 9 days, ever since the Israelis started off with this Operation Rising Lion, where several of the Iranian nuclear sites were bombed by the Israelis, which has sparked off this war. In your assessment, what do you think is happening here?
Well, I think if one looks at it in the correct context, one has to, first of all, put some facts there first. The most important fact is that there has been a war in Iran, and I think that's the most important war, between this regime and the Iranian people. Mm-hmm. More than 120,000 Iranians have been executed by this regime for the last 4 decades because the Iranian people want democracy, they want freedom. And obviously this regime has not only resorted to repressive measures, but also belligerence in the region. And actually the drive to acquire nuclear weapons is the guarantor of this regime's survival. So in that context, I think this is the most important issue that will determine the future of Iran. Obviously, the last 9 days have been very tumultuous. Obviously, the fear of overthrow is now engulfed this regime in its entirety. But I think one has to put everything in the right context to have a better understanding of what has happened and what will happen.
Okay, Mr. Gubadi, one of the calculations that was made by the Netanyahu government when Israel started this war is that by carrying out the decapitation attacks of the Iranian military at the moment and also overwhelming Iran with these military strikes, it was hoping that some people who are disaffected by the current government in Tehran would rise up against the government to try and topple the Iranian government at the moment. Do you at this moment, because it is now day 9 and the 10th night since this war has broken out, see any visible signs of disaffection amongst the larger Iranian public?
Actually, I think the signs about the disaffection of the Iranian people, disenchantment, have been visible for years. One has to keep in mind that in the last 5 years alone, there have been, for the last 7.5 years alone, there have been 5 major nationwide uprisings in Iran, and each of them getting bigger, more pervasive, and more inclusive. So the fact that the Iranian people want to get rid of this regime and establish a democratic republic and reject any kind of dictatorship, being the former dictatorship of the Shah or the current theocracy, is well established. Right. But I think what's very important to realize is that the change is not going to come from the air. The change will come from, in the streets of Iran, on the ground by the Iranian people and their own resistance. Honestly speaking, we think that neither appeasement of this regime or a foreign war is the solution to the Iranian crisis. That's very true that the world is facing a major crisis regarding Iran and because of this regime, but that's also more important to realize that the Iranian people are facing a crisis in dealing with the regime. So we think the solution is a regime change, all right, That's a lasting solution, but by the Iranian people and their resistance.
I think that's a significant point that you're making. You say that in case of a change that needs to come, it won't come from the sky, but it will come from the ground, from the people of Iran. So when the state of Israel and when several American leaders have spoken about the possibility of a regime change that they would like to impose on Iran from the outside, do you oppose these attempts by Israel and the United States of America to try and topple the regime to bring about a change in the government in Iran?
Well, one has to keep in mind, as Madam Mariam Rajavi, the president-elect of the National Council of Resistance of Iran, said just past Wednesday at the European Parliament, the era that a general can be imposed on the Iranian people, like what happened 100 years ago by the British, or the era of a coup, as we saw in 1953, ousting the only democratic government Iran has had in Dr. Mohammad Mossadegh, that era is gone. So, as I said, the only viable, lasting solution for the Iranian crisis is the regime change by the Iranian people and their resistance. And one has to keep in mind that this is the assessment that the Iranian resistance, notably National Council of Resistance of Iran, offered to the world back on December 2004. So that's basically almost 21 years ago. That again, Madam Mariam Rajavi spoke at the European Parliament and said neither appeasement nor war is a solution. And she very articulately said that, look, appeasement will lead to war. And that's where we are today. And she said there's a third option, and that's the only viable option. And that's to bring about a change by the Iranian people and by their organized resistance. And I think history has proven the validity of this assessment. And we think this is time to realize that change in Iran is needed. Change in Iran is inevitable.
Right.
And again, I have to reiterate, it will come by the Iranian people and their organized resistance. And that's the only viable, long-lasting solution to the Iranian crisis.
I think you've summed it up really well there, where you say if there is change that needs to be brought about in the Iranian government, it should come from the people, from the ground. It cannot be imposed by another nation that is now waging a war on Iran. Thank you very much indeed, Mr. Shaheen Gubadi, for joining us with that perspective there.
Thank you for having me.
For all the latest news, download the WION app and subscribe to our YouTube channel.